So this video was just going to be about the alignment tool that Nathan made us for the Compify add-on, but once it was all lined up, I just wanted to keep going through kind of different compositing stuff, and so yeah, this is kind of what we're going for. This is the alignment pass. This is all of the unfun stuff that I do at the start of every shot to make sure the tracking's working and all of that. I like to line up all of the lighting and everything right before I do any of the creative work, just so I know what the scene actually is. And I've been excited for this for a long time because we filmed on the boat with the thought that it was going to be a good showcase for kind of doing all of the digital extensions and the tools that Nathan had made. And so everywhere we went, Nathan was grabbing HDRIs and we were getting little scans and all of that. And so I think the next few months are going to be really good for doing that type of integration. And we went location scouting this morning at the SatSup reactor that was mothballed back in like the 80s. I actually don't even think they ever started it. It's just they built it, and then it could have been Chernobyl. I don't know. Public opinion kind of shifted, but it's just been sitting there. And 10 years ago, they let you go anywhere, but now we went there like, oh, we don't let you near any of the cool stuff, like the big, gaping pits and stuff. That's really cool. And I'm like, man, that's why we got insurance. We're not gonna fall in pits. Hello. So I think there's a tool in Compify that we never really talked about, and it is called the Align Camera Track. So Compify is kind of a tool suite that Nathan made and released a while ago for our dream workflow of being able to like just stick CG objects right in the footage. And so it projects stuff on there, but also cancels out whatever lighting's hitting it, so you can just kind of put CG extensions in there. I made a video about it recently. And you can get all of this from our Eat the Future GitHub. It's got, the face tracking tools and camera shakeify and the color linearization tools, and Compify, which contains the Align Camera Track tool using today, the baking delighting tools, and the UV camera project tool. But one tool he added for me was Align Camera Track. And the original intention of the tool was just to line two different camera tracks up. That's why it's called Align Camera Track. Like, say you'd filmed a shot, you'd tracked it, you'd done this really complicated digital extension with like original footage and CG overlapping in all these complicated ways, but then you wanted to add a new camera angle. And normally that's kind of a pain because you have to line up the camera and the scaling and the position and everything all accurately. But in this case, as long as you had 3 identical tracking markers in both shots, you can specify what those markers are, and this would just snap that second camera to be in line with the first camera with no fuss, which is cool. I use it a lot for like the single point in space extensions, but it turns out it also just lets you line up anything with anything, and it's a little bit, it's very easy to use, but you do have to keep track of what you're doing because effectively you're specifying 6 different points, and it can be easy to get kind of lost in that. So we'll walk through that, and then I'll show you what I've been using it for mostly, which is lining up photo scans with tracked shots, which can be really handy. So here on this cube, I'm going to select this vertex and hit Shift S to snap the 3D cursor here to the selected vertex right there. Then we're going to go to Align Camera Track, add a new point. Let's call this top left. And if I click this button, it's just going to source the coordinates of the 3D cursor, drop them in there. I'm going to add another point here. We'll say top right. And if I select this vertex, Shift S, cursor to selected, I can do that. And bottom right. Select this, Shift S, cursor to selected, and assign. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Shift S, cursor to selected, go right here, grab that, cursor to selected, that, and that. And if it doesn't work, it's just really easy to forget to move the 3D cursor or to have the wrong point selected or to select it to, from the from or the to or something like that. So if it doesn't, just try going through the whole thing again, and it should work. Now if we select the from object and say align transform, it just snaps it so it's perfectly in line with the cube. And in this case, there's no point because we could have just said, copy location. But say you don't have that. Say you're trying to scan a large environment and you want everything to snap up accurately. You could identify the same 3 points on a wall in like 2 different photo scans and have everything line up like that, instead of having to like scale and rotate and try to match that. So let me show you a shot I'm working on. I have this shot right here of Tom approaching the boat, and you can see I've already tracked it with way more points than I actually need for a track, and that's because I wanted to get that nice point cloud. And you can see right here in the point cloud, we've got, here if I hide that, these are the points from the walkway. We've kind of got the little drawbridge, whatever thing here, the gangplank, I guess, in boat terms. And these are the points from the boat itself. And I started going through trying to line up all of these faces here, but I really want to have complex extensions. Here, let's scale all these up so we can actually see the footage. Like I want there to be, I want to add digital cranes and things up here. I'm going to add more cargo. I want like a foreground kind of entry walkway that he's passing through. Probably more digital people walking around up here. And so while I have a lot of tracking markers, I don't really have enough to confidently remodel that without a little bit of hassle. So what I did is I actually just exported an image sequence of this shot right here, exporting every like third frame. Yeah, I guess only 120 different images. I dumped them into my photo scanning software of choice. You can use Reality Capture, Polycam, or Metashape is what I use. And it popped out a model that doesn't look great in general, but as long as you're like in the camera's original position, it actually looks okay. Yeah, scans that are only from one view, kind of looking towards something, never turn out great, like a landscape. You really want that kind of 360 thing, but I think it should work well enough for what we're trying to do. Here, let's just delete this footage here. And I'm going to import the OBJ of our scan. There it is. And I'm going to make it emissive just so we can see it really easily. Okay, so all we have to do is specify the location of 3 different tracking markers and those same markers here in the scan itself. In fact, I might, just to make my life easier, kind of just line them up a little bit ahead of time. And I'm going to try to find areas that seem like they have really good resolution. So like up here on this palette is probably going to be good. We've got some really good dots down here on the ground. I do want to make sure that all 3 of the points aren't in line, because then I think any slight misalignment could be multiplied. So you really want kind of a nice equilateral triangle if you can. But that means if I get something like... here on the palette, maybe that light bulb and that light bulb, I think that could be good. So I'm going to go back into my motion tracking tab and just find those 3 points. Here's one, and I'm going to select under the solve panel 3D markers to mesh, which is just going to put a single vertex in the 3D scene at the location of that point. It's so that if you want, you can easily make like a point cloud and then reconnect them to kind of like make a mesh of your 3D scene. But that's what we've already done by importing the photo scan. Also, it's just, I found it's kind of hard to try to reconstruct the scene just using the points. It's not really the right tool for the job in a lot of cases, unless if everything's made up of like big flat surfaces. But yeah, let's find that other light bulb here. And you're probably correctly thinking like, well, why are you choosing points that are actually off from the wall a little bit if the texture is probably a little bit more flush? And I don't know. I don't think it'll matter too much. Also, you're correct if you're thinking I probably shouldn't have this many tracking points on a single bulb, but I don't know. All right, 3D marker to mesh, and let's pick the last bulb here too, right there. 3D markers to mesh. Now, if we go back into the layout, you can see we've got our 3 points here. I'm actually going to hide the camera so we can just see our 3 points right here, and I'm going to join them into one object. And let's give it a shot. Here under the scene tab, I'm going to go down to align camera track. I'm going to add my first point. I'm going to scroll in here, and I think it was the knot right there. So I'm going to shift right click to set the 3D cursor just right on that surface. I'm going to call it the knot. And we're saying from right there. Then let's find the right bulb. I think it was this one, so shift right click. We're going to add a new point. We're going to call it right bulb. And we're going to do the very last one right here. And you can see I may not have picked the best point because there's already kind of some stretching, and in my head I'm like, it should be off a lot. Oh, well, I'm not worried about it. So we'll add that point. We'll say left bulb, and right there. And now we just line these up with these points. So I'm going to go over to this mesh object, tab into edit mode, and let's select this first one here. Shift S cursor to selection. That's the knot. So I'm going to select 2. And then this one is the right bulb, and this one is the left bulb. And I'm going to save. If we're lucky now, I can just select this and say align. Oh, and it aligns. And if we bring back our camera, you can see all of our points and the mesh line up really well. This is pretty good. Again, I probably should have picked points that were flush on the ground, like these oil spots or marks on the side of the boat, but I think this will actually work okay. Okay, so what do we do with this? Because I don't actually care about this original texture. What I want to do is project my own texture on top of it. So I'm going to, maybe I'll keep this here, but I'm just going to add a new material. I'm going to call it footage. I'm going to select everything and assign the footage material to it. Another tool that comes with Compify that I've talked about in the past is the camera project node group that Nathan made. So if you select the camera and go down here, you can create a new camera project node group, which just gives you UV coordinates that perfectly match this camera. And I'll show you what that means right now. Here we've got our footage material. Right now it's just the principled shader. But if I load in some footage here, image texture, sure. Here's my sequence, gonna sort it by name, select everything. I'm gonna put it into an emission shader. Dun -dun, dun -dun. And right now it's using the UV coordinates of the original photo scan, which looks kind of cool, especially because it's a video texture, so we can kind of see the video scrub through it. But the camera project node group created a group for us, so we can just hit Shift-A, group, camera project, and plug that in. And now, from the camera angle, it all lines up absolutely perfectly. It just gets weird when you get off axis. And right now, that footage material just repeats forever, which looks really weird and could cause weird like lighting artifacts with reflections and things. So I'm going to change that to clip, which is just black. But if we add in a transparent shader here, mix those together using the alpha channel as a mix factor, the footage will be 1 and the non-footage will be 0, which means it's all just transparent now. Although something that could be fun, I'm going to create another emission shader here, load in the original photo scan texture, and if I plug that in instead of the transparent, that means we get the footage where we want it, and off of that we just get our original kind of janky photo scan reconstruction, which again looks kind of weird, but for rebuilding a digital extension, I think that should work all right. And cool, now when we scrub through, everything is all lined up. And it's possible you're sitting at home thinking, Ian, that was a lot of work to do something that doesn't look quite that great. But this means we've done all of the hard work, so now we can just kind of play around with this. Like, let's say we want to chop the top of the boat off because I want to replace it with all of my CG cranes and like a CG sky and some digital environment and everything. We can do that with the Boolean. Here, I'm just going to create a cube here at the top. Scale it so it's kind of in the right place. I guess we never really squared up the track, and so it kind of looks like it's at an angle here, but we can fix that pretty easily. I'm going to shift right click right here, and I'm going to select both the footage and the camera and tell them to rotate around the 3D cursor I just set. If we rotate on the y-axis, I think that looks pretty square, right? So I can bring that down, maybe straighten it up just a little bit more. So I can select this, shift-click on the mesh, and hit Control-negative on the numpad, because I have the Bool Tool add-on activated. And oh, it looks like it goes off the edge of the Boolean there, but I can apply that. And this bit looks a little jagged, but any geometry we put in here will just get this texture projected right on it for free. So I can extrude this out so it kind of lines up with that. And maybe get some of that superstructure back. If I just line this up here with like some of these points. Gonna select everything squared up a little bit. And it's cool just to be able to watch it play and see the mesh just stick to that footage like that. That's really cool. This is a great place for being able to start doing an extension. Even this background stuff, like it's a little goopy, but it's a really good point of reference. And just for fun, let's keep going. So it's kind of weird that Tom is stretching out like this. Like, it looks okay from the camera, but his head is actually back there on the boat, and his feet are here in the foreground. And if we wanted to add a little bit of haze, or maybe even just add some weird sci-fi stuff to the boat, which we're definitely going to be doing at some point, let's put Tom in the foreground. So this is beyond the scope of this tutorial, but there's Magic Mask, which I've been using a lot in Resolve. There's the Roto Brush in After Effects, and also I've been talking with Magnum VD because he's releasing the first version of Roto Brush, which uses some machine learning to actually try to automatically mask stuff all completely within Blender. So as soon as I figured that out, he's been trying to explain it to me, I'll make a tutorial here, because that could be really useful. Because what that means is, here, let's create a plane right here, and I'm going to select the camera. I have copy attributes add-on activated, so I can hit Control-C, copy location, and rotation, tab into edit mode, and I'm going to move this outwards a little bit, GZZ. And what that does is it puts the origin of the plane here at the camera. So when I scale it, it scales away from the camera perfectly. Here, if we have another 3D view, you can see from the camera view, you can't actually see the plane changing scale. So I want to place it so it's kind of lining up with his feet right here. I'm going to give it the footage material also. I'm going to make this a new copy here. I'm just going to call this Tom. And I'm going to load in my pre-keyed image sequence here. Texture, image, texture. And I can try to make a tutorial about that. It's not hard no matter what program you use. And I don't want to make a tutorial just for people who've bought the studio version of Resolve if they're using, you know, After Effects or anything like that. But like Roto Brush, Magic Mask, and things, they're not particularly complicated tools. But yeah, open the footage. There we go. And I haven't actually tried this yet, so we'll see if it works. Hopefully, here, let's recreate our transparent shader here. If we plug the alpha just into the mix, nothing happens, and that's probably because this image actually doesn't contain an alpha channel. Here, let's just take a look at the alpha straight. And yeah, okay, I just accidentally exported it without an alpha channel, which I guess is kind of nice because it lets me show you, you know, the entire process. But yeah, here in Resolve, I select the clip, go to Fusion, and here's the node tree. Here's the media in, goes through some color space linearization. I color correct it. I boost it a little bit to give it as much data as possible. Have a magic mask node. And with that selected, all I have to do is swipe along the areas that I want to keep. And it actually worked pretty good. A few places I kind of had to go through and like alt-click drag areas to say, hey, I don't want that bit. But in general, in fact, oh, look at that. We got some of the coat back. But yeah, in general, just kind of worked right out of the box. And look at that, that's just working way better than it should. Go back to the timeline, set the in and out points. You just want to make sure when you go to export that you actually check the export alpha checkbox. But okay, yep, replace it. Here we go. And look at that, he's just floating there, and from the camera view, it's all perfect. Ugh, and if anybody has any idea why my voice suddenly started sounding echoey like that, I would love to hear it, because that's very weird. I think it has something to do with the CPU. I'll try to figure that out. And here, I'm going to parent him to the camera here, so he'll move along with the tracked camera. And all I have to do is scale him up so his feet are kind of touching his real feet. And he should be at about the right scale and location in 3D space. And here, if I turn on auto keyframing, I can just go through real fast and try to match him up. I'm just always going to use like the nearest foot to the camera. And okay, now we've got an appropriately scaled Tom kind of walking through the scene like that. Whoa, and now if we want, we can just stick stuff on the side of the boat, like different sci-fi modules and things, and like, it's not perfect, but it's a really great starting point. Another thing that we did is Nathan Vegdahl got an HDRI at every location that we filmed in right after we got the shot, and so I can line this all up with, let's see if I can find it. And yeah, here we go. Looks like Nathan got this as we were actively shooting it. There's Nathan. Hello. There's me. There's Tom. There's Nick. So this should work really good. Gonna load in HDRI merge, which is a part of the color tools suite that Nathan released, and drag all of these into there. Say build HDRI, puts it all together, and I can change the preview exposure. And yeah, that seems. Ooh, look at that. Look at the sun flaring out. Yeah, that seems okay. Save it. Oh, save with the preview exposure. Yeah, Nathan just added that button. That's cool. The gangplank, is that what's called? Then I can load that into the world, change the color to environment. There it is. And if I put an empty right at the world's origin, so if I create a sphere and then hit Alt-G, that resets it to the intersection of all the different axes. I can go into the shader editor, into world. We've got the HDRI here. And if I bring up some mapping nodes, I can say object and just select this one right here. Select the empty. And now if I rotate the empty, it'll rotate the entire HDRI. And so hopefully I can just kind of match this up. And maybe turn up the brightness a little bit to match the footage. Look at that. Okay. And now everything is actually ready. I've got this big old mess from every other angle, but it's going to be really easy to model my extension in here or match it in with other shots. And it looks like if we add an object, the HDRI isn't actually working as a sun lamp, which could just be because we didn't stop down enough while we were grabbing the original HDRI images, but that's also not big of a deal. Here, let's create a sun lamp here, and I'm going to line it up with, you can see our angle is just from this low point where the sun is shining from here down to right here, like that. So I'm going to put the sun right here and just line it up so it like points in that general area. And then as long as I have this in somewhat the right kind of direction, looks like it's maybe kind of shining towards us, kind of like that. Reline it up, and yeah, that should be pretty good. Maybe even dial it in slightly more, so then yeah, the digital extensions and the real footage have more or less the same sun hitting it. That's nice. And then because we can't have done all of that and not do anything fun with it, here, let's create a little plane right here. I'm going to make a little walkway for him to kind of walk through like that. Do that, extrude that out, stick it so it's kind of lining up with this, and if we should just be able to pop it through here, line that up with the wooden beam. And look at that, it's as easy as that, and he'll just be walking through his little archways. Oh, that works really great. But the biggest thing we've done is just make this footage fun to work with. I can't wait to just keep messing with this shot and kind of see how everything goes. Which is important because a lot of times I'm looking at a shot and I'm like, oh, this is overwhelming. And so when you can get to the point where you've done all the hard stuff and then you just get to kind of like play with it, that's a good place to go. And yeah, a lot of these tools just make that a little bit easier. And I stayed up a little bit later and played with it some more, and I am really happy with how this is going. I cleaned up the tracking just a little bit, made sure I had more foreground data to be working with, and I added Compify, so you can see these actually are interacting with the footage a little bit. There's some shadows kind of going on. This boat warble is maybe a little bit much. It's a very wobbly scan, and so we can see that, but I can just smooth that out and that'll be totally fine. So yeah, I think this is all prepped to be a nice, really complicated extension, and I love how tangible it is using the actual HDRI lighting from the day. And I like that we can turn on the depth of field and just kind of actually control it pretty well in post. Look at that. I would say, hey, let's keep working on the shot, except that I think it's going to be a lot of small, like, individual projects. Modeling the boat is going to be huge. I want to have all these different articulated cranes lifting cargo and all of that. There's going to be this whole foreground kind of tunnel that he's walking through. The background is going to be some of those big cement structures, which is going to be really cool. But yeah, anyways, I think that's going to be it for today. My face is currently in so much discomfort because of this pollen outside that yeah, I'm just gonna say it's good. All right, talk to you soon.